Of course, there is no question that Libya and the world would be better off with Gaddafi out of power. I, along with many other world leaders, have embraced that goal and will actively pursue it through non-military means. But broadening our military mission to include regime change would be a mistake.
Disappointing speech because we didn't get the answers. We want to know what is the end game.
All righty, and that was the president and one of the responses from last night. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of go line by line on some of the most important things there and talk about exactly what was said last night. John Dadian is a political analyst, and he takes a look at these things all the time. Good morning.
Good morning,
to
Dan.
you. And I know that you watched with great interest the speech last night, but I think that a lot of us are still confused. What is our role? Do we want to get rid of Gaddafi? Do we not? Are we involved? Are we not? Is the UN involved? Are we not in charge of the UN?
Here's my response to you, Dan. Don't know.
Don't know.
Don't know.
I mean, still, there's confusion.
And the words you use is that we're going to go through this line by line. The one line that jumped out at me was, he said, and they're calling it the Obama doctrine, he said, this particular country at this particular moment. So here's what the problem is with that type of statement. What happens if there's a worse atrocities, but it's not the right moment or not the right country? Do we let it go by? And of course, the other criticism is this: right now as we speak, there's atrocities in countries that some people consider worse. We're not stepping in for that. So what is the consistency here? And the answer is, it is not being a consistent foreign policy. Sure. Very bad foreign policy.
Yeah, and I mean, you were getting conflicting statements as well from Hillary Clinton, the defense secretary, and the president. Over the weekend in the talk shows, Hillary Clinton basically stepped on Robert Gates when Gates said that Libya is not a vital interest. And she's, oh, well, yes, it is. What is it? Why do we care about Libya? I know they have some oil, but not much.
Well, you know, on a purely political aspect of this, because I look at all aspects of the foreign policy, but on pure political, a lot of people had a concern as far as just a handling of the Oval Office and the West Wing when Rahm Emanuel left as chief of staff. He really did control things. He was the only one strong enough to make everybody from the Secretary of State to the Secretary of Defense have a unified message. He left. Now you see what's happening.
Well, you know, arm twisting goes a long way up there. And Daley isn't an arm twister. All right, let's talk about this. And you know, we're talking about this grandiose plan to sort of share the responsibility with the so-called United Nations and the Security Council there. Who's in charge of the United Nations?
Last time I checked, it was us. Last time I checked, as we were the biggest donor, the biggest impetus. I mean, it really is. You keep scratching your head when they come out with all these aspects.
Yeah.
You know, I look at a bellwether, what the late night comedians say, and it's interesting that Jay Leno said, he said, a couple years ago we voted for change, and Obama said we have 2 wars right now, and now we have 3, so there's your change.
Yes, no doubt. And also this morning we're talking about arming the rebels. Now, last night the president didn't even mention the rebels, as I recall, didn't really mention them as a group. It was sold as a humanitarian issue, a humanitarian mission to save the innocent people. But these innocent people are the rebels, right?
And I think it's a little disingenuous to say that, you know, to say that we're doing it to stop the genocide, because anytime you start lobbing missiles in, you're taking a part in the war. It's a civil war, and anytime you do that, so clearly we have to take a side. Here's what the real problem is. Right now, the rebels, the so-called rebels, pretty much look unified because they have a common enemy, Gaddafi. But that is very tribal society. Once the common enemy goes away, you're going to see those tribes. And then where do we stand? One side's going to want to support them, and it's going to be fractionalized. That is the quagmire that I think we should have learned from history, but I see us getting very deeper in that.
And I mean, that's what's happening in a lot of the North African and Middle Eastern countries right now. They're tumbling like dominoes.
And the most recent example, everybody, our generation remembers Vietnam, but the most recent example was Afghanistan. You know, we helped them against the Soviets because that was common enemy. The minute Soviets went away, they went back to their hundreds and thousands of years of tribal fractions.
Which makes it so difficult.
Makes it so difficult.
Absolutely. So there is no end game. There really was no direct mission to say this is what our role is and this is when we're getting out and this is our mission.
Here's what I think is unique about this situation is normally, as we've seen in history, whether it be President Reagan, President Clinton, you've seen that he has a policy and he has his supporters and he has his detractors. On this particular one, not Iraq or Afghanistan, but on Libya, you see a lot of people that should be his supporters the Democrats, even liberal Democrats, coming against him. Dennis Kucinich is calling for impeachment, who's always pretty vocal, always very entertaining.
Well, they wanted him to go to Congress first.
Absolutely. And you see the Republicans, who are normally, pro-military action, et cetera, saying, what are you doing? So he's getting it, no pun intended, he's getting fire from all sides, worse than the rebels in Libya.
John Dadian, wow, what a world we live in, isn't it?
It is.
It's amazing. Thanks a lot, John.
Very good to see you, Dan.
All right, good to see you too.